What's up, y'all? Hey, Smokey got the greeting too. Hi, bud. Hello, everybody. Sorry it's been so long. We are back, though, and we are diving back into John chapter 15. We're going to read verses 5 through 7 and break those down, and then we'll keep going from there. But to start out, let's just go ahead and read through those verses. So, starting in verse 5, it says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. So, first glance, for me, I think the thing that always stands out to me is just the fact that Jesus has such strong language at a time where it's the end of his life, and the lesson he's leaving with his disciples is not only just this abide, but also if you don't abide, that you will be like a branch that's thrown away and you wither, and then you'll be gathered up and thrown to the fire and burned. And to me, I think I always used to look at that more as a threat of like being burned. And then I think the part that really stands out to me now is the fact that it's like, it says at the very beginning of 6, in me he is thrown away like a branch and withers. Like, the fact that he's pointing out that you become useless without God. Like, you wither away without abiding before you're ever burned. Like it's not just this, like, oh, you still had a chance. Like, you just made one mistake and, Jesus picks you up and burns you because you stopped abiding. Mm-hmm. But it's more of you stop abiding, and then all of a sudden that passion you had for God, that spirit you had, it withers away.
I think of it like if the fruits of the Spirit, the things that you should see in a Christian just slowly start to diminish and shrivel up.
Well, I think about like some of the people, we know that have gone through kind of a process of where they were part of the church and it seemed really good. And, things came out about some of the things they were struggling with and have now gone back into. And you do. I think that's a really good way of pointing it out is the fruits of the Spirit. Like, you see those fruits not be prominent in their life. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's like you're not even looking at the same person. Yeah. That's powerful. I love that. What do you think stands the most out to you when you're first gazing at it?
Outside of what I just said, I kind of cut you off.
No, you're fine. Did you have anything else that stands out? That was good.
No, I just really like that idea. Like, he prunes what is not bearing fruit. Right. And that doesn't, above it, he's talking about how he prunes branches even if he keeps the rest of the branch.
Right.
So like he prunes us even though we are walking. It's not talking about someone who is slowly falling away until he prunes it and throws it away. Right. It's pruning the believers and sharpening them.
Yeah.
And so I like how he switches from that. He starts with his people, his sheep, whatever you want to call it, and prunes them, and then moves to people who aren't bearing any fruit and prunes them. And I think, I don't know, right, wrong, or indifferent, this thought just came to me. I just think it's interesting how he does his own people first, because it's like he's giving an example of, I'm going to prune you, but it doesn't always have to be a bad thing. And so the people who he does prune later had like a chance to see that it's not always a bad thing, but they still choose to let those fruits of the Spirit shrivel up. They still choose to walk away.
Well, and I think what you find is a lot of times pruning is where you have a lot of those people, like, they stop abiding once the pruning starts.
Yeah. And so that's a better way of saying it. Like,
I knew
he prunes everybody.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that you should walk away because of that. It doesn't mean that you should be the ones that are being thrown into the fire and burned.
Well, and I want to pose this, thinking about ministry, us doing ministry. I wonder how us as a church, as the church, how much of us not preparing people for pruning is a cause of a lot of that. Obviously, it's not always the problem. Like,
Yeah.
it's not always, like, the church can do everything right, and you're still going to have people who follow it. Jesus had disciples that fell away, you know. But I do wonder, some of the more, you know, people who are intentional, people who are serious at first, but aren't prepared for the pruning.
Yeah.
How much?
Because they've been given a fluffy gospel.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, or even not an intentionally fluffy gospel, but almost just an lack of expectation as far as what pruning really looks like. Because I think I've seen pruning in so many different ways. I mean, I think of, you know, loss. I think it's been pruning. I think, you know, whether it's a financial situation with the job changes, things like that, where you're in periods of unknown. I think that's pruning. But even more than that, I think there was a lot of pruning in, you know, preparation for, you know, sermons where this one didn't go the way I planned, and God pruned me by, like, showing me where I was stepping into my own sermons, and like, I've seen places there where I didn't do as good of a job, and you walk away knowing that, but you can't quite put your finger on it. And then I did have some times where I was like, I'm not. Like, I'm preaching my stuff. Like, I'm not taking enough time to be with God. You know, I'm throwing, when we were in Lewisburg, you come back from work and you're throwing something together a couple of times. Yeah. And I'm like, all of a sudden, hold on. This is where I got pruned very heavily, was God saying, you're doing too much of yourself. And I think that's a pruning that not a lot of people see. Not everybody sees that. But I think of things like that.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I think He prunes and he makes us aware of where we're not abiding.
Right.
Because, like, I mean, there's been a couple of times that that we've had conversations. I'm like, hey, I just feel like God's really showing me how this is a problem. Yeah. Or, like, this is a sin for me that I need to stop doing. Yeah. And so it's just him making us aware of where we're not abiding and convicting us on those things to change. Yeah. I also really like, it's a very, so if we take this, I think I've said this before, but I feel like sometimes scripture gets lost into just pretty sayings. Especially if you grow up in the church, you hear it so much. Right. And so if you take it, like, literal, because it's truth, apart from me, you can do nothing. That's a really humbling statement.
Well, okay, so I like that you brought that up, because that was going to be my next point, is when I read that, first off, just the promise of whoever abides in me, I abide in him, has always been an encouragement to me. That's a huge piece of what brings me comfort through my day-to-day, is knowing that if I'm abiding, like, if I'm chasing God, he's going to do the same. He is abiding with me. I don't have to ever feel like I'm running after God and not ever having a return. God's never running away from you to try to get you to run harder or anything like that. It's like the minute you abide, he abides as well. So that was a big change. And then you get to that end for apart from me, you can do nothing. And kind of back to with the giving messages and things like that, that was a huge change for me, was the realization that apart from God, I can do nothing. And I think that is what really stepped in with public speaking, with teaching, small groups, having one-on-ones with people. I would try to think of what I needed to do for these people, and then God just said, no, it's not about you. Step out of it, because you can't do anything without me. And so flips the script. All of a sudden you're bringing God into it, and I think it's been the same for our marriage as well. I think I've gotten, I don't know if you remember that period where I was just like, how do I lead? I don't feel like a leader. I had that moment of just not feeling like I was leading well. And I think the big change was I wasn't leading well. Yeah. And I wasn't, because I wasn't letting God lead. I was trying to lead. Yeah. And I wasn't able to do it. And I did fall short. And we did have issues. And it's like now I feel like we hardly fight. And all of a sudden, God is that center. We're always running back to focusing on God. And now when we encourage each other to do things, it's less of feeling like we're attacking one another and more feeling like we're pushing one another to God. And I think that was a big change for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like verse 7. I think it can be abused to, like, whatever you wish will be done for you. Mm-hmm. But I think it's like that other one is like, he will give you the desires of your heart. Yeah. Does not mean that he's going to give you a brand new house and, like, a Lamborghini and, like, all these things that you and your flesh want. Right. It's God making it evident that something needs to change and changing your desire to want that. So then when you pray, that's what you're praying for, and he answers those.
Yeah.
You know, because
I feel like in a lot of ways it's been a long time since we've had that full-on fleshly desire for stuff, though.
yeah.
I think of, if God could give me anything, you know,
Yeah.
what would I want? And a lot of times what I find myself wanting is, please, God, get a hold of this person's heart. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I think about this verse.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you know, I can see how this can obviously be taken wrong, but you do get to a point once you're chasing so hard to where it's like, I do want
You
this
want
to be
those
done,
things.
and that's a good
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think about all the Psalms and
Yeah.
David crying out to God like, God save me from my enemies, God be with me. These intense cryings of knowing who your loving God is, and
Yeah.
I think that's been a huge piece for me ministry wise, is figuring out how to bring in the want for Christian desires.
Yeah.
For the want for things that Christ would actually want in my life has changed dramatically in comparison.
Well, I think it's a want to draw closer to God. And so if that's your desire,
Right.
he's obviously...
Well, you know, there's a
Let it
very,
be done.
very big saying of, you know, the Christian hedonism of
Yes.
God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied
Yes.
in Him. And I just think about that. Like, if my greatest desire is heaven,
Yeah.
and I'm chasing heaven, I'm full on chasing heaven, I do see the desires in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I have pain, that doesn't change the desires of my heart, because the desire of my heart is not for earthly things. The desire of my heart isn't for everything on earth to go well. It's to see lives moved for the kingdom. And so sometimes those hurts are hard because I see it. I see people not use those times to get closer to God, and that's hard because it worries me. But the truth is, for myself, what I'm finding, the more and more hard news we get, is it just makes me want to focus so much less on this earth. It makes me want to focus on heaven. It makes me I want my family to be in heaven. You know, I want the people I love to be in heaven. I want our groups to be in heaven. And all of a sudden, it just shifts. And I just want people to take it seriously. I want people to have this love and this desire for it. Because desiring God is the greatest thing out there. And when you desire God, it's easy to have the desires of your heart fulfilled. Because
Yeah.
God will show himself even in the bad.
Yeah.
I think that's been a huge thing for me. I think it's a good one to point out, because I know that does get misconstrued a lot. Although it's funny, I don't think it gets misconstrued a lot in our circle, though.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you don't experience. I know there's prosperity gospel and stuff out there, but I mean, it's just funny. We don't feel like we run into a ton of people who that's
Yeah, I was
the
like, I
problem.
feel like that hasn't entered our circle, but I do know where that can be.
Well, and maybe that's not a fair thing to say, because while they're not praying for Lamborghinis, it's probably still a lot of prayers for self, a lot of prayers for comfort, more than we really realize. And I think, I'm trying to think of the things I've prayed for here recently, like how many of those were just comfort? How many of it was just wanting earthly comfort, not like God comfort me, but just wanting some sort of earthly comfort. And I do think it can be sobering to recall. I know, Louise, if everything you've prayed for was answered in the past week,
Yeah.
how different would the world be?
Yeah.
And that's something, if you really do start taking a category of the prayers you've been asking and kind of a list,
humbly.
you're like, oh, shoot, what have I really been praying for? Suppose I didn't need that Steam Deck after all.
Yep.
But it's things like that. It's looking forward to Kalia coming into the world.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden my desire is to have a little girl who loves God.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird thing. Yeah, that's a weird thing. I think it's even weirder because I've been desiring so many of our youth students to love God. To have your own kid now who you're desiring to love God, it's exciting. It's exciting. I just can't wait. I can't wait to share this. Can't wait for Kalia to hear the gospel and get to experience that for herself. And I definitely think that's the biggest encouragement I can think of. It's just having a heart that so desperately wants people to feel what you feel. I think of a lot of people I work with and people I'm around, and I'm like, I don't want you to be sad. Like, there's a way out of sorrow. There's a way out of pain. There's a God who's so much bigger than all of that you can enjoy freedom and peace and joy, and you don't have to be void of tears, but you can avoid so much of the pain that comes along with the tears.
Mm-hmm.
You can have tears, but you can have joy in the same hour that you cry. I wish I could get more people to see that. I think that's just where I'm at in my walk, is just that desire so much for other people, and now it's got to transform into me learning more to share with other people.
Yeah.
But I love it. I think that's a piece of. It's funny when you see yourself in the prunings. It's funny when you see yourself not as the branch that might be getting withered here soon. You start looking at, wait, I have been abiding. So what does it look like now? What's the next step? Like, what's the next step of abiding?
Yeah. It's like, how do you keep abiding?
Well, and how do I distribute my fruit? How do I not be a tree that's trying to grow outside of the vine? How do I, because I think sometimes our habit is, I'm abiding with God personally, but I'm hiding my fruit. I pick all my fruit before it gets a chance for anybody to see it, and I hide it away. And are you really abiding at that point? Like, what are you at that point? If you're trying to get in with the vine, but then when the vine wants to share this fruit, because that's the whole purpose of the vine, is to share the fruit of the vine with everyone.
Yeah.
And you're trying to hog the fruit of the vine, what do you think the vine's going to do with you? What do you think the vine wants from you? What does the vine want from us? The vine wants us to produce fruit. Jesus wants us to produce his fruit. And so if we have a personalized Jesus and we're grabbing all of our fruit and before it ever gets to see anybody, and we're building up knowledge and we're abiding, I read my Bible, I'm praying, I'm worshiping.
But it never leaves that.
Right. All of a sudden, you've just become this little, like, goblin taking all the fruit from other people. That's what I think. It's funny to say like that. I know it's kind of goofy, but I do think that's what we do. Is we become this little hoarder of the fruit and the knowledge that we're learning because we don't want to have that conversation. We don't want to have to be that one. Or maybe it's just pure selfishness of like, I want what I want, and I don't want to share with the people I don't like. I don't want to share with people I kind of dislike. You know what I mean?
Don't get to pick what the Great Commission is.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like we just talked about that. Crazy. Do you have anything else that stands out to you?
No, I think that's it.
I love it. That's all we got for you. It was a long video, so I guess we have not been talking as much as we should have because we had lots of words to say. But we love having you guys just be able to join us in our experience of diving through the Bible and just trying to learn more about God and trying to abide better. Smokey is trying to abide with us as well. But I just encourage you all, if you have prayer requests or just need, any conversation as far as if you have questions on what it looks like to abide, how to abide better, please ask away. We want nothing more to be able to help people that we know and love, or people we don't know but we still love, and want to be able to just share what we have and what God's given us with others. And so our song of the week this week is going to be "Your Way Is Better" by Forrest Frank, because I really like that song and I think it kind of fits in with this. So that's going to be our for this week. I'm very excited to continue going through John 15, and we will be having little baby Kalia popping out here soon. So who knows if she'll get to make a special appearance here in a video here shortly. I'm very excited for that. But we love you all. Look forward to talking to you guys again. Hope you were able to just find some encouragement and some just empowerment from the scriptures as you listen to this. And we look forward to talking to you again on John 15 and going through this even more. Deuces.